Hello there, and welcome to the RMC Brown webcast. My name is Ross Brown, and I'll be your host today as I revisit a subject I initially discussed in May on the 15-Minute City. If you like what you hear today or find it otherwise entertaining or informative, then please click on the like and subscribe and leave a comment below. So, for those who've not seen my previous video on the 15-Minute City, I gave some high level thoughts on why the political right have not embraced a concept that is in many ways very conservative. The link is in the show notes, but it raised some interesting critiques that deserve proper examination and reflection. I'll certainly try to provide what I believe to be solid evidence whilst remaining cognizant of the fact that even incontrovertible proof is often not enough to change someone's mind, and if you continue to disagree, that is your absolute right. So let's jump into it. The first question is whether it is helpful or divisive to look at such things from a political angle. If it wasn't already immediately obvious, RMC Brown Limited is driven by what I think are small c conservative aims. We want to conserve historic buildings and traditional city layouts, as well as ancient crafts and technologies, and promote the use of traditional building materials, and we make no apology for it. Freedom of movement is also an essential philosophical tenet. That doesn't necessarily come with the preclusion of cars, but they should at least be weaved sensibly into the fabric, rather than acting like a laceration that requires excessive and somewhat incongruous stitching. In that same vein, we strongly favour development when it arises from the bottom up, rather than taking a centralised or top down approach. Encouraging grassroots input leads to placemaking that is more deeply rooted in local identity, and because it's owned by the community, will allow for more adaptive growth and is of an appropriate scale. It's perhaps no surprise then that an organic approach results in places that adhere more closely to traditional settlement patterns. In terms of further reading, I would strongly recommend Jane Jacobs' seminal work, The Death and Life of Great American Cities, which repeatedly and effortlessly eviscerates modern town planning and how it has only encouraged urban decay and social isolation. My second assertion is that suburban living is actively disruptive to communities, and that people who live in traditional and walkable neighbourhoods experience higher satisfaction. But where's the evidence to support that? The rise of car centric cities as a progressive idea are, by definition, somewhat counter conservative. And whilst some cities do better than others at integrating roads into their historic fabric, when it comes to building new settlements, we know that car centric city layouts prove stressful and expensive for their residents. There have been some fascinating studies of late using visual simulation software, which really indicate an innate preference we have for features more typically related to traditional architecture over modernist design. A couple of articles I'd recommend are, first of all, from the Urban Science Journal in 2022, which was authored by Brillman, Buras, Salingaros, and Taylor, and focuses on using eye tracking software to assess the impact of fractal geometry and biophilic design. We have a further study that uses similar technology published a year later by the Norwegian University of Life Sciences in Oslo and came to very similar conclusions. Then we have an article from last year published in Sustainability Journal that stated, quote, residents living in traditional regional architecture performed better in terms of belongingness, social identity, and life satisfaction, suggesting that traditional regional architecture has unique advantages in supporting community cohesion and individual identity. Close quote. Links to all of those in the show notes below. Focusing in on the UK, Create Streets have produced a number of policy documents that support the idea of traditional settlements, facilitating more resilient communities than modern suburban developments. The No Place Left Behind report argues that walkable and mixed use neighbourhoods encourage civic interaction and social cohesion, whereas suburban sprawl often lacks the infrastructure necessary for strong communities to develop. The Creating New Towns Fast and Well paper advocates for replicating the success of traditional settlements and using existing infrastructure and historic urban patterns in new developments. It recommends human scale design and mixed use buildings whilst avoiding car dependent suburban layouts. The argument that local businesses are net beneficiaries of pedestrianisation schemes is perhaps a bit more contentious. A 2024 government report on low traffic neighbourhoods noted a positive correlation, but also acknowledged limitations in the completeness of its study and was cautious about drawing nationwide inferences from either very localised or overseas case studies, which is entirely understandable. However, the Pedestrian Pound study, released by Living Streets in 2018, highlights numerous case studies where footfall had increased sharply following pedestrianisation projects, up by 30% in some instances, and referenced Stoke-on-Trent, Altrincham, Wanstead, Coventry, Bristol, as well as many others. Retail Times interview with Catherine Woodhead, chief executive of Living Streets, revealed that time and money spent on the high street increases when they are walkable, a fact attested to by a vast majority of London's business improvement districts. Other localised studies also paint a positive picture. Following a pedestrianisation trial in Shrewsbury, data analyst Beauclair reported an average increase in sales of 14%. However, when we drill down into the data, we see that those retailers based in the pedestrianised zones saw their sales increase by 37%, particularly in the grocery, general retail, and food and drink sectors. A similar initiative run in Bognor Regis from 2012 to 2018 was instrumental in cutting retail unit vacancy rates in half and increasing business confidence in the town by 9%, very much bucking the national trend at the time. So, more to do, but certainly reasons for optimism. Last but not least is the impact of dispersed settlements on the finances of its residents, and incidentally is the easiest to demonstrate with the least amount of evidence. Beyond the well established understanding that the higher the density of land use, the greater its potential for fiscal productivity, there is the fundamental issue of the cost of road maintenance. UK local government statistics show that rural and suburban authorities often allocate more per capita to highways maintenance, especially in areas with extensive road networks and lower population densities. This is also backed up by a recent report from the National Audit Office, which shows that local authorities with larger geographic areas and lower densities face higher maintenance costs, particularly for minor roads. Further to this, we have a 2021 report from Queen's University Belfast, and that is unequivocal. Cities with gentle density have reduced infrastructure maintenance costs and enjoy more efficient provision of utilities and public services such as schools, libraries, and healthcare. This is not to say that urban areas don't carry their own share of unique costs, but when it comes to highways, areas of gentle density have demonstrable financial advantages. As before, I maintain my position that there is merit to the idea of the 15-minute city, but also that it's the likely consequence when people take control of their own communities. People like to live in nice places. Who knew? The key really seems to be locally led, grassroots driven effort against the path of least resistance, often preferred by elected bureaucracies. Good things don't happen by accident, they require vision and ambition and courage. We who see such value in the idea of traditional place would do well to focus on offering the best possible defence of ideas we know are good to an often justifiably sceptical public. When it comes to end goals, we probably have far more in common than you'd think. Thanks a lot for your time today. As I mentioned earlier, you can find references in the show notes below. If you've liked what you've heard, then please like, comment, subscribe, and share this video, and I look forward to speaking to you next month. Goodbye.